This is the Experience Share podcast,
where I, Mark the Joe,
and I, Rowan the Pro,
share our differing experiences in the Pokemon trading card game and competitive circuit.
Whether you're playing for fun or you're trying to reach the top, we hope our Experience Share can help you level up.
If no one's listening, we'd be talking about it anyway.
So if you are listening, then be sure to use what you learned to beat those who aren't.
Okay, Rowan. Portland Regionals just finished up. Let's get straight to the most important thing to talk
Now,
about.
before we start, though, I do want to give a quick shout out to all the people who came up to me at Portland Regionals, said hi, said they liked our podcast. It really made my day.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you to everyone that's listening to our podcast, people that have reached out through DMs, people that have messaged us and said, hey, they're listening to it while they work. That means a lot to us. Our goal as we go through this first few episodes to establish our quality is to make sure that the quality of the stuff that we talk about and what you're experiencing is the most important. And we're just going to get better as we go. So thank you to everyone that's listened. That applause is for you. We've discovered how to use our soundboard. So, third episode, we're learning every single time. But Rowan,
Yeah.
we need to talk about the most important thing,
Yes.
which is Bradner versus Gearhart 1 this Sunday. I know this is going to come out after. We'll already know the results. I think it's a big part for Pokemon. I really want to talk about that, but I think we should actually talk about the event first.
Okay. All right.
And our experiences. Was this your second time in Portland?
Yeah. This was my second time in Portland. I went there once as a senior, but I didn't really see the area. I really enjoyed Portland. I loved the venue, and it was my first tournament representing Game Grid. So shout out to Game Grid.
Yeah, shout out to Utah
got my
Joe,
swag. Yeah,
maybe now
Utah
Florida Joe.
Florida Joe.
Man, lover of cards and cards and boats.
And boats. That's
And
right.
boats, if you're looking for a boat in Florida.
Yeah, so shout out to all the Game Grid guys. We had a great weekend. Makani, Tran, and Azul both performed really well. And Makani had a sick deck too. He played like this arc pile. I haven't even had a chance to look at the list. I know there's Regigigas V-Star in it though.
I was actually talking to Makani. Makani actually, his Arceus, Vulpix, Flying Pikachu deck. That was the only deck I got with day 2 last year. It was very simple. He's a great Arceus deck builder. He was like, for real. I said, I looked at your deck. There's so many healing options. I think this is much more complicated than a regular Arceus deck, but like, good on you. And I think he wants to go back to Charlotte Regionals and have a really, really good event there. So that's coming up. We'll be talking about that. But more on Portland itself. Before we get into the tournament, they had a really good judge staff. The venue was great. I got ice cream at the venue. I got a slushie at the venue. And they just had a lot of options, and they had a lot of late night options. Usually when you go to regionals, after day 1, you're looking for food, you're scrambling. My phone's blowing up because everyone's like, where we're going to eat. And there was a lot of options that were open late night in Portland. So as a city, really excited to go back there in the future. You didn't go to San Antonio. San Antonio was pretty cool, but I think I liked Portland as a city a little bit better.
Okay.
But going into the tournament, we kind of predicted the top 4 decks. Right?
I mean, well, we thought Gardevoir would be a little higher, I think, but otherwise, yeah, we got Charizard coming in at number 1, Tina at number 2. We definitely had those down. Miraidon came in at number 3, which you definitely saw coming.
I definitely, yeah.
So we were right on the money there. Tina actually had like a 22% day 2 conversion rate again,
Which kind of holds strong to what's been going on with the other places. I think we said Gardevoir was going to be part of that big 4, and Inteleon just by like 0.15 had a little bit more percentage points. But in day 2, we only got 2 of the top 4 conversion decks. So out of those 2, we had Giratina and Gardevoir being in the top 4, and we missed out on
Snorlax, Stall, and Mew VMAX
being the other 2 big decks. So I mean, let's start here. This was Tina's tournament. We were talking about how the last Tina got second with Grant Hayes. It's been really knocking on the door. Multiple top 8s at all the event. Out in Europe, we have Alberto that he's been crushing with Tina. He popularized like the 4 switch cards, no escape rope. Here we played the 3 switch card, escape rope, switch. So it's a little bit different there. But Tina proved itself. It finally won a regional. So Tina finally wins a tournament. It's been called mid this whole time by Azul. That was like a big part of it. But it finally takes down a tournament.
And
And
Azul lost to Tina as well.
okay, I don't know if you
He did.
call him out like that. I think that's a really good thing to just cut
Yeah, sure,
and
just
put a
cut.
trailer no, to put in the trailer there. So Azul, you're getting called out here. But really big congratulations to John Eng. John Eng is someone that I've talked to at a lot of tournaments. Saw when he was in seniors going up against Zhao Zhao and yourself and that whole crew. Isaiah, he's always been on the forefront. I think he was a little too hard on himself when he was always talking about how he didn't win in top eight. But as long as you keep putting yourself in that position, it's kind of his tournament of destiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really happy to see John win. I've been friends with him for a long time, and he always seems to be like so close, but he doesn't get there. I think he's got to be proud of his accomplishments already, but he definitely breathed a sigh of relief. I know, like Isaiah and them, they love to tease him about never winning. So
That really hurts because some of us will never win.
yeah,
But for John, that finals, one of the best finals we've ever seen. When you see the prizes there, how do you expect him to take that turn to knockout? But he gets there. And the number one deck that we had going to this tournament that would be played was
Charizard or Tina? We had Tina.
we had Tina, and then Charizard was the second one. How do you feel about how Charizard fared in the tournament? I mean, Azul,
I mean,
fourth top eight.
yeah, fourth in a row. Is that right? Four out of six of the tournaments. Anyways, crazy number. And I think he's really just showing how resilient the Charizard deck is. We had tons of counters. Tina was everywhere. Rapid Strike saw a decent amount of play, and he's still finding success. I mean, other players as well finding success with Charizard, but he really seems to be spearheading the Charizard love, and I think people really got to show this deck some more hate in Charlotte.
Big change to the deck itself was the in Azul's list was the removal of the seventh energy for the second super rod, also the removal of the justified gloves.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those changes?
Yeah, the TM devolution seemed like brilliant to me. The Justified Gloves was really just for the Charizard mirror, and now devolution serves the same purpose but just better. You just punch all their Charizards, you punch their Pidgeot, and then at the end of the game you just Iono them to a low size and de-evolve them all at once. And it also means that you're not taking any knockouts throughout the game, so you're just hitting for 180. They're hitting for 180 over and over again as you start to see increased damage. So that was brilliant, I think. Yeah.
I think in the mirror now, if that is kind of the game plan, you're gonna get to two people hitting each other, waiting to hit that Devo. So it's kind of a game of chicken, and that's gonna add even more complexity into that mirror.
Yeah, it's going to be about setting up like as many Charizards as possible. I mean, and extra Charmanders, probably just the first one to Devo. All three Charizards will be the one to win.
The other big thing is Miraidon. I had that as one of the top four decks. You had it as one of the top four decks. Did not have a great day two conversion rate. It actually had a horrendous day
Yeah,
two
it was
conversion
really
rates,
bad.
but
Again.
it was number one after
Oh,
Swiss
okay, yeah, yeah.
in Nicky Moffat's hands. He's really shown his range this year, being able to play Charizard, Lost Box, a lot of decision making decks. But this weekend, he went with a hit hard deck,
Yeah, he did.
and he hit the hardest in Swiss, and then he bricked in top eight. I mean, that's going to be standard deviation with a deck like that. What are your outlooks on Miraidon in that tournament going forward? You did not play against it at all. It destroyed my tournament, but why do you think the conversion rate was much lower?
I mean, I don't like this deck, but I think its conversion rate probably suffered as a result. I don't even know why it did worse. It wasn't doing too well in San Antonio. I mean, it doesn't have a good matchup into Zard, and Zard stayed popular, so I'm sure that had a negative effect on Miraidon's day. Urshifu being in the top four decks probably also didn't help Miraidon's chances, and I think the Tina matchup was okay, but that's not a great one either. So I think if you're really looking to hit it with Miraidon, you're hoping for a big spike in Guardy play, and there just seemed to be a lack of a spike in Guardy play this weekend. So I mean, Nick Moffat getting into the top eight, number one seed, anyways. But I'm personally not a fan of this Miraidon deck.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know if
think
you have some
I
good things.
definitely will talk later about how our tournaments went, but Miraidon definitely hit me really hard in testing with Miraidon deck, and I know that there's a lot of testing with the experience share being added, and like I've diverted to calling Miraidon into classical Miraidon, which is the JW
Like
and
Path
the
Judge.
Jesse builds with Path Judge that we've actually strayed a lot from versus the Peony versions. And Nick wasn't running the Peony version; he was actually running like Triple Iono in his deck. And I personally think that the Peony version's probably the better version right now. So it's very interesting to see the classical Miraidon deck just show that I guess it's just so consistent in setting up, especially with you having Battle VIP Pass on a stick, you having multiple copies of that card. You're always going to set up. You can use it at any point. It always gives you, if you, cards get Iono to the bottom and there's no path, you got to bring those cards back into your deck, right? And you're living on your electric generators, which, there's a lot of decks that live on trainers, so living on a rare candy. This one's living on electric generator. One thing that you've lived a lot on is Cramorant.
Yep.
Uh,
Chromatic. Yep.
Cramomatic, and that had a lot of people put into day two. So do you want to talk about Mew's place in the meta?
Yeah, I mean, again, it seems like I was saying the same thing for San Antonio for a lot of these decks, but Mew performed there at an exceptional level. I think like a 20% conversion. And again, it has like a 20% conversion. We saw Ian Robb, we saw Vance Kelly, we saw Terrence Miller. And I believe, I'm not sure, but there was one Fusion Mew player who actually did the best out of all of them. But in total, there was 6 Mew players in top 16, which is kind of crazy to think about. I mean,
That's
people,
more than a third.
yeah, it is more than a third, and people clearly aren't packing their Spiritombs, or maybe they are. I mean, we see this at least a Sparkle Fusion Energy package, so maybe this deck even beats a Spiritomb now. I'm
I
not
I
sure.
had Spiritomb in my deck. I did not play against Mew, but I was ready for it.
Yep, my run was ended by Mew, karmically, I guess, because I judged Path a lot of people into some dead hands, and Terrence Miller, he showed me what was up. He gave me 5 energies and then a sixth energy off the top the next turn, and that was that. That's what I did my run.
It was Miller time for
Miller
you.
time.
The time had come on the clock. Rowan comes over. I'm sitting down. He's in day two. I'm just playing some games. And he comes and he's like, "Hey, I just got destroyed by Mew." And the first thing I said to him, I looked him in the eye. I was like, "Justice," because he's done that to a lot of people. If you play Mew, you do that. Special shout out, Venusaur Vmax.
Yo.
I remember you came over while we were testing and like, what is this? So, we had Brian from Tabletop Village, and there's this joke that he was just trying to sell this dead product of the Venusaur VMAX, and his deck. If you look at his deck list photo, he has all promo Arceus. So he doesn't have regular. He has, so we're opening boxes of product to make sure that we have Arceus V-Star because he
Yeah.
sold all the Arceus to his customers already. But he said, hey, he wants to play this Venusaur card because hypothetically speaking, Charizard can't one-shot it. So that Venusaur VMAX should be able to take 4 prizes. So for those that are unfamiliar
With Venusaur
with
VMAX.
Venusaur VMAX, Venusaur V is a 220 HP, 3 retreat V that for 2 energy, it does 50 and heals 30 damage from himself. That's a green and a colorless. And then for green, colorless, it does 190
This
and
Magic player, man.
does 30 to itself. So it is one-shotting a lot of Dark Week things. But the evolution has 330 HP, so it's extremely big. One could say it's almost like a rhino or something. And then for colorless, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it's green, like
I think
grass.
it is colorless.
I think it's colors.
Colorless.
It
Yeah.
does 30 times the amount of grass energy you have on the board. But then for grass, colorless,
Yeah.
it's 210 and heals 30 from itself. So it's this thing is one-shotting at Charizard, right? And Charizard is not one-shotting 330 HP. So he only played against one Charizard in day one, which happened to be Pablo Tableman Meza, who was playing. So think about it. You're Pablo. You're one of the best players, and your run is ended by Venusaur VMAX.
Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal.
Yeah, so I think it's tough. I think the deck has legs. I think with any Arceus decks, I've been putting some time in it. So it's Arceus, Giratina V-Star with Venusaur VMAX because he was racking his brain. His first build had Toadscruel in it, and I was like, what are you doing? I've tried Toadscruel.
I have two. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's if it seems very good on paper, but it definitely is not.
No, it is very bad. It does not function as a deck.
So I said, hey, Tina, Arc Tina, off the face of the earth. But they were running the Serverpor.
Oh yeah, no, Superior.
Superior. That Pokemon's
Yeah, yeah.
after my time. I've never played that in any of my decks, but it had that card in it. And I said, well, what if you just replace that Pokemon with the Venusaur V and Venusaur Vmax? He's like, wow,
Yeah, I mean, you just get more HP. You still one shot the Charizard.
you're a genius.
Not bad.
So yeah, shout out to him for making day two. Shout out for getting 8 wins with that deck. He deserves every accolade. And then for you, the last deck we haven't really talked about. Oh, we should talk about Stall.
Oh, true. Yeah, Stall performed very well. It was even I can't remember, but it was up there in the stats for conversion.
Yeah, it was top 4 conversion.
It was top four conversion, right? And then Hale. I mean, I was just looking at his list right before this episode. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. There was a Radiant Charizard and a Chi-Yu EX. That made sense.
Chi lets you mill your
Yeah,
opponent.
you mill 2 cards. That made some sense to me. But he had a Radiant Charizard in there. I don't know what was going on. I haven't digested that one yet. But we did see a lot of control decks, presumably beating up on these Charizard decks.
If you Chi 20 times, you should win the game.
You do win, yeah.
Yeah, as long
Even
as it
against
survives.
Lost Tina. Hey, if they Abyss Seeking 20 times and you Chi-Yu 20 times,
They just
you
they
win.
just lose, right?
there you go.
And they will be abyss seeking.
They will
It
be.
just gives up 2 prizes. So that was a big one. I did not play against Stall, but I heard horror stories of people that went up against Stall back to back round 1 and round 2. I talked to at least 2 people that had that happen to them.
Yeah.
I don't know how big Stall is going to be for Charlotte. We can talk about that when we get into that deck. But Gardevoir,
Yeah, Gardevoir.
one
That's
of the
last
2
one.
big the Jake Gearhart side of the battle. You played Gardevoir. Why don't you talk about Gardevoir?
Yep, I will. I'll go. I'll go through my run, and I am definitely on the Jake Gearhart Guardy side, as I played against 4 Tinas in my tournament run in the first 10 rounds, and I didn't lose to a single Tina.
The
Thank
4-0
you.
against Tina, well deserved.
That's right. That's right. My day one was actually super linear. I played against only Charizard decks and Comfy decks. So kind of interesting there. I know you played against a big variety of decks. We'll
Yeah.
get into that later. But yeah, this Guardy Tina matchup, I think Tina just really struggles against Iono. As long as you have a Jirachi to protect your Curlias, you can draw as many cards as you want, do whatever you want, and fall behind in prizes and make a comeback. And Tina's draw engine can't really do anything about it. That's what I think.
When I saw you, you were like, I'm thinking of playing again. I'm thinking of audibling to Tina, right?
Yep.
And then I watched you play game after game in the hotel lobby to decide that you're just going to play Guardy.
Yeah.
Actually, at one point you were debating playing Miraidon, and then you were like, we absolutely cannot play Miraidon after I told everyone that I would not play this deck.
Yeah,
So
I can't-
no
no-
meta manipulation. Like he's
No
true to
meta
his
manipulation.
true to his word. But okay, I watched you just play that matchup over and over again. And what happened?
I got destroyed. Gabe Smart, he was playing Guardy. I think I played 3 or 4 games, and he did literally the same thing every game, and I lost every game, and I just said, okay, I'm done. I wasn't even drawing bad or anything. I was just getting straight up smoked, and I was like, okay, Guardy, we're locking it in.
Yep. Australian top 8 competitor. Gabriel Smart.
Gabriel
Yeah.
Smart, that's right.
Oceania region. He's a top 8 competitor in the Oceania region. Very good. But yeah, you guys played a lot of games. I think we saw that Jirachi made a huge difference in that matchup
Definitely
and
did.
having that down at the correct point, and that's someone that's very close to your or at your level when it comes to competing.
Yep.
So that was a really good skill. Speaking of playing in the lobby, to the players that are watching, we had a lot of people come looking at decks, looking down. I was playing the Venusaur deck in the lobby. Some people could have caught up. People were like, man, where can I get this card? We were just kind of going through the matchups, going through Charizard. I actually really like playing in the lobby. I think it's a great place to play Pokemon. Sure, you might leak some good decks. Like, what do you think? Are you a never play the deck that you're playing in the lobby type person, or there's just so many people now?
Yeah, there's too many people. When I was in seniors, I was definitely a don't play your real deck in the lobby. And I think that probably holds now. I think you don't want the other, when there's, 15 top competitors, you don't want your top competitors knowing what you're playing. But when you're playing in the Masters division and there's hundreds of amazing players, it really doesn't matter. No one cares that I'm playing Guardy. That's what I think.
Well, Owen Dalgard definitely did not want people to see his Paldean Whooper.
It's Paldean Wooper. Man,
Yeah.
that guy's crazy for
Look,
playing a Wooper.
hey, he finished ninth or 10th, so he just bubbled top 8, but he played a 59 card deck.
Basically,
Not cheating.
a
He,
Paldean
he
Wooper.
played one Paldean Whooper that had nothing to do with anything in his deck just to try to win with having 59 good cards
Oh my
and he was
gosh.
so close. So shout out for him trying. Did you ever try that?
No, I never tried that.
He was trying to win every
I just
tournament.
wanted to win, man. Winning was enough. I didn't need to emote on everyone.
Why do you think, we predicted it to be the top 4 play decks? Why do you think not that many people played Guardy? And even when if we kind of look at the top day 2 and we look at the top players, why do you think that none of the top players really? Justin C from Toronto, like he 25th with Guardy. There was a Stefan Tobacco 17th
and
with Guardy.
Bodie was in top 4,
Yeah.
I believe, with Guardy.
Michael Davidson, very good, 38th place with Guardy. It just seems that like you're 50, 51 with Guardy, Michael Meal 56. So kind of why do you think from this meta spread that Guardy did not have more placements in the upper echelon of that day 2, and there's more kind of on the lower echelon of day 2?
Yeah, I think there's two factors. I think the biggest factor is that people don't want to play Guardy. I think a lot of people I talk to have had an experience where they play Guardy to a League Cup or they've played it to a one regional and they hit time a bunch because they don't have enough practice with the deck and they can't play at an appropriate pace. And you get ties. And when you're getting tons of ties, the deck sucks. If you're like I had 3 ties, and that's something I'm going to be working on. I'm playing a League Cup tomorrow, and I'm just gonna play every round as if I have 15 minutes left on the clock, so that when I get to these regionals and have those games with 15 minutes left on the clock, I'm able to play well quickly. And I think that a lot of people don't think about that before they play the deck, and then they have a bad experience. They hit time a bunch, and they say, this deck can't finish games. It sucks, and then people just don't play it because I think like looking at the data heading into the tournament, Gardevoir looked like a slam dunk to me, and I think it was a slam dunk. I think it was a great meta call, but people just don't like the time rules of the deck. That's what I think. Yeah.
Speaking of time, a shout out to our sponsor because it's always game time at itsgametime.ca. Game Time Collectibles, our local store where we play, real big sponsor of the podcast and making sure our locals have cards. Back to the podcast now. We're getting really good at these transitions.
That was a good one. Actually.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever play Guardy, and I mean, never is a pretty strong word, but I do not think I could handle it, and I think that I'm above average player. It requires a lot of thinking, requires a lot of setup. When I played round 2 versus Justin C, every Tina versus Guardy matchup comes down to who's going to an end game where either you win this turn or they're going to win next turn. I know you can say that about any game, but it really comes down to like one person has 1 prize left, one person has 2 prize left. There's a Roxanne, there's a Path. Did they save out their stadium outs? That was our biggest thing in our match. I was like, hey, I got down to that last prize. You didn't play a stadium all game just so you could break that lock at the end. And I was like, I was upset, but it was more like you outplayed. You found that line to go through to it. And I think in every Gardevoir game that I played Tina versus Gardevoir at a regional, now San Antonio and at Portland, it has been one game. It is like 41 minutes, 37 minutes, one game. At the end of the game, we're not even setting up for game 2. Like when Justin beat me, I was
Packed
like,
it up, eh?
I was like, hey, I literally took the match slip, I initialed, and they go, sure, I could donk him, but if I donk him, there's not gonna be a third game, and then your mental fortitude in that matchup, and I've seen them saying on Twitter that they're worried about Jake Gearhart's mental fortitude versus Isaiah in 9 games of that matchup because it's so intricate. And I watched Isaiah, stood behind him and watched him play Tina, and he actually plays Tina so fast. Yeah. And his flower selecting decisions are so quick. And that matchup itself, if you have average players, above average players, like it is going to go time. Like I played Gearhart at Toronto Regionals. I was on my Lost Box variant at the time, which was Charizard. He was on Gardevoir, and we tied. And it was a natural tie in game three. So it's just a hard matchup, and it's going to be one of the defining matchups on day two. Now, when it comes to time restraints and stuff, local, I said I call him out, Felix from Banana Games. He came up to us after round three. Rowan's 2-1. He's upset he's 2-1. He's like, I should be 3-0. I'm 0-2-1. Like, I have every right to be upset with myself. And Felix is like, I'm 0-3. And the first thing I say to Felix is, I'm like, that's your fault.
Yeah,
And
that's his fault.
when it comes to ties, and this is probably me coming as a Magic player, there are like no ties in Magic the Gathering. If someone has two unintentional draws in a tournament, judges are going to be on that person for slow playing because people are trying to get to a natural resolution in their game. In Pokemon, it's certain formats, there are going to be ties and it's like picking the decks, but it's the small things. Like, so I talked to Felix. I was like, hey, okay, tell me what happened, right? If you're going to say it's not your fault. And he said his first round, his opponent took a knockout on three prizes, but then did not take their prize. So he was playing the whole game like his opponent had two prizes and that he could counter catcher. And then when he looked, his opponent like didn't have a prize and there was like a scuffle there. And then eventually his opponent took the prize, but it threw off his prize trade. Like, if your opponent takes a prize, do not draw your card for turn until your opponent takes their prize.
Yeah.
Like small things like that, just to prevent any of these situations that could happen. But if he wins that game, then he's not in the tie bracket, right? And if you're not in the tie bracket, you probably don't get two more ties. Because as soon as you're in a double tie bracket, your chances to play against someone that also has two ties just reaches. Yeah. And then by that time, once you have two ties, they're basically losses.
Yeah. But I think some people also, you'll hear people say they tied, and I think almost 100% of people would say, oh, my opponent didn't play fast enough. And your opponent probably goes to their friends and says the exact same thing. Oh, my opponent didn't play fast enough.
You should be playing fast. And this goes way back to my first day two, 2018 Hartford Regionals. I'm playing Drampa, Garb, Potown. Great deck.
Oh, yeah.
Great deck. Super fun. Super balanced. And I play against Zhao Zhao on day two. We're like 2 wins away. Like I was two wins
close.
away. I was 2 wins away from like making a top 8.
Playing Greninja, right?
He was playing, playing Greninja. No more on the Greninja. No more on the concealed cards.
Yeah.
Hey, his simulator is great.
Yo, the simulator is good.
But we're playing, and we go to time, and we're just looking at each other. And I know he has game next turn. He does. And in my head, I'm like, okay, with this, now he needs one more win for top 8. Mm-hmm. And with this, I still have to win 2 more to make top 8. A tie doesn't really make a difference. And I conceded to him. And then we had a judge call. And this was first, and I understand why the judges did it. And they were like, hey, did he coerce you? Did anything happen? I said, absolutely not. I said, they're like, so why did you concede? I said, I conceded because I could have played faster. He could have played faster. But no matter what, he was going to win the next turn. And if the roles were reversed, I would want him to concede to me. Now, I've played Pokemon for 5 years now. I know that 90% of the time that's not going to happen like it does in Magic. But put in that situation again, like I would do it. We both could have played faster. And a lot of times, like I see in tournaments, people going about it the wrong way. Like I see people going, hey, you need to pick up your pace of play. Do you think if you tell your opponent, like, you need to pick up your pace of play, they're going to pick up their pace of play? What are you going to do, right? Or, hey, it's very simple to just say we both need to play a little faster. And I think that is the best way to diffuse the situation. So if you're at your League Cup, like when I was in League Cup in Buffalo, one of the players was getting told as this person that was telling everyone they had to play faster. And sure, people need to play faster. But when you tell someone in a game, and some people are playing the game for different reasons, that's why we have this podcast, when you say you need to play faster or you need to make a decision, right? That's going to throw them off their game. That's going to provide some hostility. Even if it is the correct and the right thing that should happen, just saying we both need to play faster. Or do you have a decision? Because in my games that does happen sometimes, but we need to be better on, or don't play decks that take ties.
I mean, yeah. But I agree. Like your language is important. If your goal is to finish the game and have your opponent play faster, being angry at them and saying you need to play faster, it will probably actually make them slow down. Honestly, they might do it out of spite, or they might just like kind of be taken off guard and kind of pause and take longer on their next action. So yeah, I think like being intentional about like kindly asking your opponent to play faster. And then if you do think it's intentional, just instantly call the judge.
Sometimes you have to call the judge like right at the start. I mean, and shout out to the judges. They can't. It's so hard to track slow play.
That
Like we
is so
see
hard.
them talking on Twitter about how the judges not like every game is different. Every pattern is different. It's about establishing a pattern. Like if the start of the game, like people are taking 20 seconds on a decision, how do you expect them at the end of the game to be taking 5 seconds on those decisions, right? Sure, you should have less cards in your deck for like flower selecting or not, but with Tina's rise too is the Tina mirror actually does come to 3 games a lot of the time because with Tina setting up to boss the other Tinas and knockout Tinas, you are taking more knockouts in that game and you're taking more two prize knockouts versus where in Gardevoir, like there's a lot of one prize knockouts that are
Yep.
being taken there. And the Gardevoir turns dexterity wise, sure, you can flower selecting maybe twice. You can concealed cards. You can chorus, but your turns as Gardevoir with trade,
It's like draw,
refinement,
shuffle, draw,
shuffle,
shuffle.
find an Iono,
Hmm.
worker you if that's not the play. I need to manually get energy for my discard. I need to put dice on my Pokemon for my psychic embrace. Like
Yep.
that takes a lot of time. So being able to play that deck pretty fast, like when people think that control is like not very slow because
Yeah.
they go, how do I disrupt my opponent? What is happening on this turn? Am I changing what's in the active for my opponent? Am I misfortuning sisters them? Am I sitting them? What is my supporter this turn? And then it's a pass,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So like
Fast turns, just a lot of turns.
you look at Cal went what 9-0 in San
Yeah.
Antonio with
No
control,
ties.
no ties.
No ties.
So I think that's the big difference in the decks that you choose. Now, day one,
Yeah. Day one.
how'd your day one go?
I mean, I kind of touched on it already. It was a lot of Lost Box and Charizard decks. Um, I started off, I think, 3 or 4 Charizards in a row in my first 4 rounds.
Nice
So that was,
three
yeah,
one.
nice 3-1. Unfortunately, lost one of those. Got a little bit unlucky, but it's neither here nor there. Round 8, probably the most eventful thing that happened in my run was that I played against Hunter Butler, and Hunter Butler was playing a Lost Box deck. And I have no idea why he was doing this, but he was playing at a very slow pace the entire match. And we were 5-1-1. It's one more win to get into day two.
You can afford another loss, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I can afford another loss, and then a tie is basically a loss. And Hunter Butler, he's a reputable player. He's played
Yeah.
for a long time.
Regional winner.
Yeah, I would have assumed that he knows like the situation we're in. But he seemed to not care. He seemed to want to play slow. And so we ended up tying. We barely started the third game, and he told me after the match that he was really happy with the tie. So I have no idea. That made me really frustrated, honestly. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know why he wanted to tie. I would have thought he would want to resolve the match, but he didn't. So then I was really upset going into my last round. But my last round opponent, shout out to Frank, was a really nice guy, and actually I was able to calm down really quickly, just because he was a nice guy, and ended up playing a really good game round 9 against Tina to make day two, 6-1-2.
I think this is a good part to talk about to people that might be newer or whatnot, and just to you, like being someone that's more on the higher level of the competitive circuit, is everyone have their own tournament to play. So in your head, hey, like I'm trying to win the tournament. I just want to get as many wins as possible. I think we even talked earlier this year that sometimes it's just better to take if you're gonna tie early to just concede and take the loss and avoid having more ties because it's the same thing and you avoid that place. But your tournament game plan is to try to get as many wins. Maybe his tournament game plan is to try to get the least amount of losses. I don't know if that's the correct, but
Yeah.
I can see your frustration and everyone that can be frustrated. And to people that don't understand why the frustration is a lot of times you expect tournaments to go a certain way or for you to play it or to go through. But for Rowan too, it's just a lesson like, hey, it's okay for you to be upset, but then it's also like what he's doing is what he's doing, right? That's what the way he wants to play, or if it's a race, that's the way he wants to drive. If he's playing basketball, that's the way that he wants to play the game. But your frustrations are completely
Yeah,
valid.
yeah.
I think in the same point, especially if you're both trying to win. But a lot of people are trying to get that tie, or they want to against a bad matchup, right?
Yeah, honestly, I think people do a little too much of that. Even like yeah, if you're playing Charizard and you sit down against a Guardy, some people have the mindset of, oh, I'm happy with the tie here. I don't think that's good. I think even if your matchup is bad, play for the win. A win is worth three times as much as of a tie. So even if you can win that series one in three times, that's equal to the tie. And
Yeah. And then maybe you take better matchups by taking the loss. And we've actually seen, and people don't remember these certain things, but we've seen multiple people go undefeated with, say, 10 wins and five ties, or 9 wins and like six ties, and they bubble.
yep,
They are the ones bubbling when it comes to top eight. I don't know what the math is
yeah,
behind that,
I don't
but
know how it
I've
works, but
actually
maybe the
I've seen it
ties count as
multiple
losses.
times, because even like Isaiah at the one tournament, he went undefeated.
Pittsburgh, maybe.
Yeah, I
Maybe
don't know if it's that,
I think
but
so.
or it might have been Toronto. No, it wasn't Toronto. But
Whatever it
there was
was.
one that he just missed based on that, and it happens a lot in certain places. And if you're trying to win by not losing, so
That's
it
not.
might it might affect you too if you're chasing, right. So it might be good to go for those wins. When it comes to having ties and having people kind of celebrate the ties. So my tournament was tough. This was the
Yeah.
toughest tournament that I've started, and I told you after the tournament I've come up with a really good concept for some of the Joe players like myself. Um, it's the concept of a 5 win deck. So while the pros are trying to get a 8 win deck to go 8-1 or 8-0-1 or 7-0-2 to go into day two, I think if you are chasing the minimal invite or chasing to always grow at every event, the 5 win deck is the concept for you, because if your deck can get 5 wins in a tournament, some tournaments 5-4, 5-3-1 is going to get you points, but some of those tournaments your deck is going to get 6 wins and you're going to get into day two. Some of those tournaments the deck's going to get 4 wins and you're going to be a little bit upset. But the number one thing is to look at your season as an average. And if you aim to get 5 wins at every tournament, then a lot of the times you're going to be right there for points. For me, I've scored points in 4 out of 6 tournaments I've played this year. You're 100% on points, right?
Yep, I believe so.
But I've had a win and in for points in every single tournament, and usually it starts pretty tight there. This tournament we started 0-3-1, which absolutely sucks. Like, it sucks. Like, you fly, you prepare, you win a League Cup the week before, you take a lot, and maybe looking back, the Tina Moon deck was not consistent. Sure, there's more power, and I knew it wasn't consistent. I just really enjoyed playing it. But round one, I played against Austin Drake on Tina. He is the only person in the top 10 of CP in Canada, which we were both in the top 10 going into that weekend. That was not from our region, but I
Right.
knew from his name that he was very good. And he outplayed me in game two. I was like, hey, knock out my Tina. Let's go. I'm a Path Rocks and you. But then he just put 6-6 on a Comfy, and eventually took 4 prizes in one turn. I'm like, this guy, he's really good. So shout out to him and BC. We don't get to see a lot of their good players. Round two, I play against Justin C. And we play a 1 game Gardevoir Tina matchup that can go either way. And you just have to understand that your averages will balance out. Like, that was a very good game. 5 times I'm going to win that game and I'm going to be 1-1. And 5 times he's going to win that game and be like 1-1,
Yeah.
right? Because we were both 0-1 there.
Yeah.
And then I played against Maridon. Great person. They had a service dog, which was a giant Australian Shepherd. I have an Australian Shepherd. I was really jealous I couldn't have my dog. So, I had like my spirit animal versus his spirit animal. But we played. I don't know how I tie Maridon. I have absolutely no idea how Tina ties Maridon. I'm saying it's because I was distracted because his dog was really cute and it took up a lot of my
It
attention.
was a cute dog. I
But
saw the
but then
dog.
afterwards he was like, "Oh, I sure am happy to get that tie," and I was like, "I bet you are." And there I am, 0-2-1, and then I play against Maridon again. And when you're a Tina player, you sit across Maridon, you're like pretty happy.
Yeah.
And when I played against AC in round three, one of the things that he said to me, and you should hear this too, is he's like, Last round, I whiffed 3 generators. And I knew as soon as he said that I was into a world of pain because again, averages. If this guy missed 3 generators a match before, there is no way he's missing three
No,
generators on this match. And he
he's
only
hitting them
missed
all.
one. He missed
Yeah.
one in 3 games, and that was tough. And then I played against another classical Miraidon, with Path and stuff, and he's like, I don't play that many regionals, but I topped 32 Vancouver last year. I topped 32 Portland, and I was like, okay, I'm in a world
Okay,
of hurt.
okay.
And he's like, I've let all my lucks all use because of last year, and then I another game where I get turn one Iron Hands, right? And you can protect yourself as much as possible on that. Like you put a Tina, but then they go Miraidon, so it's really really tough if they start hot. So I'm 0-3-1, and part of me wants to give up. Like part of me was like ready to drop, hang out with the kids that I coach, just enjoy Portland. But I said to myself, like, how can I tell my kids to keep playing in a tournament if they're having a bad tournament and I'm the one quitting? Like I still have a chance. And I said this to Daniel Zhu. He was 0-2-1 or whatever as well. And I said, hey, like every bit of CP counts. I've missed worlds by 32 CP. Like just stick in there and see what you can do. He finished 5-3-1. I won my next round against Oi Cologne EX. And this was my first time 0-3-1 like really being at those lower tables later on in the day. Everyone's so nice.
They are super
Like everyone's
nice.
so
Yeah.
so I play against Owen Cologne EX, like really cool deck. And after I win game one, my opponent, she asked me, okay, do you want heads or tails? And come on, like Pokemon community. This is round 5.
And nobody told her.
She's played multiple rounds. And I said to her, I'm like, has no one told you that you don't have to roll? So the people that actually accepted that roll, I hope you get some coal in your stocking next year. Because that's not cool. And in that same round, I actually prevented a penalty because on the table beside, it was crazy. Opponent calls over a judge. We're shuffling up for the next game. Judge comes over and the opponent he goes, my opponent has 8 cards in their hand. And after they research, they had a card to the side that's now in their hand. So they have 8 cards. They have 1 card that shouldn't be there. And their opponent was a newer player. She was very flustered. And I just go, hey, man, if you knew that they were researching and they had a card to the side, why didn't you just tell them to discard the card?
Why didn't he say anything?
And then the guy immediately was like, And then the judge was like, did you wait till you drew for turn to call the judge on this? And the guy was like, yes.
Oh my god.
And then the judge was like, I'll be right back. Right? Because come on, like
Yeah, you can't do that.
you know the one, right? Like especially we're 0-3-1. I know we all want to win even on the 0-3-1 table, but like that wasn't cool. And I mean there are certain things like people drawing under path or stuff like that. Like you forget to prevent sometimes you can prevent it. But that one he knew because he was like, hey, this card was to the side. Judge comes back and goes, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a card from their hand. We're gonna put it in the discard. We'll randomly select it. And it's going to be a warning. Are you okay with that? And I knew they were searching for a DPL, but they were like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So again, like it doesn't matter where we are. We want to try to make sure that we're good to our opponents. I know that you said you prevented a DPL.
Yeah. My round. You know what? I actually don't know the round, but he was playing Lost Box, and in the third game, he went first, and his first action, he put down a Colress's Experiment, and I went, whoop, nope, you're going first. You can't play Colress. And then you know what? We actually ended up tying, and I had 1 prize left at the end, and one more turn I would have won. And
But I don't think
tie.
you wanted to win that way, right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to win that way. And at the end of the day, I would have felt bad all day if I
You would rather take that tie than a round 8 tie.
yeah. That I felt way better about that tie than my round 8 tie. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
which too you could, like as a competitor you could be kicking yourself, being like, hey, I missed a percentage point here, and it's okay. It's absolutely like if you're one of those people that can't let that go and
That's
you need to
okay.
win, like that's how you want to play Pokemon. I've been there in the past that I've been on one side or I've been on the other side, and it is how we play the game. But I think it's better to try to foster with newer players to try to keep them in the game and prevent those happening. So yeah, I actually battled back from 0-3-1 to 4-3-1, having a winning in for points in the last round, which I think really is a good show to the kids. If you coach or if you coach anyone, like never give you come to that tournament to play Pokemon. It's so easy to quit, and we've done it at many tournaments. I've done it, other people have done it, but you're not going to get better at Pokemon if you're not playing those games. So that's why I wanted to get more experience. I was like, maybe it wasn't the right deck choice. I unfortunately lost in the last round. I got thoroughly outplayed. I played against Rapid Strike, and to everyone, Tina Moon should be Rapid Strike. I've been telling myself that forever. But I am 0-3 against the deck. In my head, I'm like,
Wow.
man, I'm going to V-Star one person, and then I'm going to Frenzied Gouging another person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's me, but I am 0-3. Okay. Giovanni, I know everyone that's beating me on that deck. San Antonio, my opponent beat me. And that was like basically to keep going in the tournament. Giovanni McCook beat me at a challenge because he forgot he had an Octillery and decided to Iono instead of getting Karina in his 3-card hand. And I lost because the Iono was very strong. And in this one, it wasn't like thoroughly outplayed. Game 2. I cram spit into a Metacham, and I'm like, this is great. And then they smash uppercut my Cramorant with their Metacham with 110. I'm like, oh, let's go. You're giving me 2 free prizes? And I have a Jirachi on the bench. I'm not worried. Like, and I KO his Metacham, their Metacham, and then they draw, and she just goes Clara for
Medicham.
Metacham,
Yeah.
Rapid Strike Search,
Okay. Get the energy.
get the energy,
Yeah.
Yoga Loop your cram. And I was not ready for that. I've never
It's an active.
because it's in
Like
the
the
active.
yoga
It's
loop
good. I even
active.
pointed to the Jirachi, even though I knew the Jirachi. It was like a reflex,
Yeah.
and she was like, "No, it's only to the active. It's only." And I was like, "Yeah." I begrudgingly sucked my hand. Like it sucked because you put all that effort to get back there. You want to win. Like you've worked hard all day, but it was my mistake. Like it was on me, and it's a learning experience for the next time I'm in that position again. I've had a really good run of just like being able to win those matches, and this one I wasn't even tired. This tournament went by really fast, but I just got thoroughly outplayed. And when you do get outplayed, you have to take that and tell your opponents that they just played you better.
Yep.
So your day 2.
Yeah, my day 2 run. Ups and downs. I started off well for round 10, so I'm coming in at 6-2-1. And in my first round, I hit a Tina, and at this point, like I'm very confident in the Tina matchup. I sit down, he flips over a Tina. Life's good. Take a win, 2-0. We finished 2 games. My opponent actually, well, you know what? I'm not gonna get into the pace of play shenanigans. We're just gonna move past. But I take it down 2 games, complete games, and then in round 11, I believe I played against another Tina. Sorry, round 11, I played against an Urshifu VMAX. I played against Brandon Salazar, actually.
player.
Yep, for all you who've been around a while, you know.
Fire Pokemon enjoyer.
Is he a fight? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Was he Pyroar or was he.
I think it was some sort of like Volcanion or some
Volcanion.
weird something. But yeah.
I know him from like 2014 US Nats or something like that. He played this Landorus Gardevoir deck, and I think he won or maybe he lost in the finals. But I remember being 12 and watching his stream game, and that was super cool for me.
Yeah,
But
U.S. Nationals 2014.
Landorus Raichu
Yeah.
Garb.
Yeah,
Yep,
first place.
First place. There you go. But anyways, he was playing Rapid Strike, and we ended up having a super close series. In the first game, I got to go first. I set up a board, and I used Cresselia to heal off all of his double gunners, and I was able to stabilize, and I won that one. Second game, he got out way too quickly. Double gunner, yoga loop. My board was decimated. I barely got to play. And then in the third game, it was a super close game. And at the end of the game, time was called. And when time was called, I was turn 0, and I needed 3 turns in order to win the game. And I would only get 2. And he needed 2 turns to win the game. So I had to make this play where instead of going for the win, I actually just had to boss in his Radiant Alakazam, put up a one prizer and pass. And I was kind of disappointed. I really wanted to be able to play for the win, and I had to make kind of this, I don't know, lame play of being like, okay, I hope we tie now.
Yeah, to preserve your tournament instead of trying
Yeah,
to win the
I
game.
had to preserve my tournament life. The tie kept me in it, and he ended up passing, and the game closed out. If we did have an extra turn, I would have pushed for the win, but it would have allowed him a chance to win the game as well. Like boss stalling the Alakazam basically just guaranteed the tie, whereas my winning play was to knock something out and hope that he didn't have the game. So kind of unfortunate we didn't get to see that one play out, but not a bitter tie at all.
We've seen a lot about like just your tournament around here that you just do not want ties, so that's
Yeah,
really
I
interesting
hate
to see.
ties.
I think one of the things is in Magic we get +5 turns, and I used to think maybe if we had +5 turns in Pokemon, we would come to more conclusions. But now after 5 years of playing this game, I believe we would still have the same amount of ties because people would still
Just play
just
slow.
playing at
Yeah.
that pace, right? So I would like to think with those extra turns we come like an extra turn per player. Maybe it's something they can consider in the future. But with future Pokemon, you also played against one of the future All Stars, maybe current All Stars. You played against Goldango.
I did. In the next round, I played against the Goldango Palkia. I believe the only
They
only
were
they were the Goldango Palkia
yeah.
player in day two, and I think they closed out a top 64 finish. I'm not entirely sure, but when I played against him, he was 9-1-3, so he still had top eight, or no 8-1-3, 8-1-3.
Yep.
He still had top eight aspirations. Unfortunately, the Palkia Golden Go deck doesn't line up very well into Gardevoir, and I was able to just use Shining Arcana to outtrade him 2 games in a row. But it was super cool playing against the deck. And when he flipped over a Gimmighoul, I definitely gave him like a smile and like a fist
You
bump.
were ready.
And,
You're like, I want to play this.
yeah.
Didn't play the lady. A little disappointed in his deck. I like that.
What does Lady do?
You search your deck for 4 energy.
4 energies.
So I
Okay.
feel like that's a lot of damage. Like you're taking a knockout if that's your supporter. But I don't think with all their attackers being 2 prizers, that could be
It didn't work.
Yeah.
The biggest thing he was missing is if he had like several copies of Avery, it would have been really awkward. He could have kind of pressured my draw because I would have had to keep Manaphy to protect from the Greninja, but he didn't play Avery, so my board was always safe, and I was able to put together a quick win there. And then in the round after that, I got Judge Path by Terrence Miller. He showed me how it's done. I think I said already,
Yep,
6
Justice.
energies, Justice, all that. And then in my last round, I played against Connor Peterson.
great player.
Yep, great player.
World's finalist twice.
Yep, Worlds finalist, maybe twice, definitely once.
Yeah.
He lost to Magnus Peterson, I believe, 1 year in seniors.
He's a great enjoyer of scarves from his senior photos.
Yes, he is.
And
He's a scarf
a
enjoyer.
big fan of his beach blonde hair.
Yep. And we played a fairly one-sided set. Game one, I got destroyed. Game two, he got destroyed. And then game three, I just had this pitiful opener. I survived. I was attacking like barely. I had a Gardevoir EX and like no Curlias, and I was pokey stopping every turn, and it was just a sad game, and I ended up getting destroyed in the end there. But I still made top 64 and was very close to making top 8. I love to compete, so even though at the end like I kind of got destroyed from some bad luck, I had a lot of fun being able to play those high stakes games.
I think in the actual games themselves, and I've seen this with Brazil and you losing your win and in Pittsburgh. I think when you lost that win and in at the end there, I think we were much more okay with it because you had played that tournament really sick.
Yeah, I was really sick.
But this one, you did the watch my bags, and everyone was looking for you, and I knew you were probably taking the time to gather your thoughts of being so close. So if I know it's something that's very personal, and it's something very close to people, and it kind of makes you vulnerable. And we look at a lot of these top players, and when we look at them, we think they're invincible. We think they're kind of like, hey, like how can they be disappointed? X, Y, Z. You want to talk about that disappointment? Like I think it's really good for people to hear that you're human. You win a lot of Pokemon games. You still lose Pokemon games too.
Yeah.
But what is that? Taking that time to yourself to compose yourself and get your thoughts. Like what is that process like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to lose, and especially like the amount of effort I put in, and you get to this point in the tournament where you're like, oh my gosh, like I can make top eight, I can win the tournament, and then all of a sudden like you just like lose and your tournament's over. And I know other people have that experience as well. For me, like when I have that experience, I know that like oftentimes people don't want to hear me like complain about my games or say like, oh, I'm unlucky or talk about that. So often when I lose those games, I just take a walk. And so that's what I did. I just packed up my things at the table as quickly as I could, walked out and kind of just let myself be sad, honestly. I went to a far part of the convention center. I didn't cry. I thought I was going to cry, but I didn't actually cry. I ended up running into my friend Joe Turrentine, and he'd also just lost his last round, and we kind of had a couple good laughs about that, and that really cheered me up.
I think one of the things here to talk about too is crying at tournaments. My brother's cried a lot of tournaments. There's tournaments where like at the end like I miss like there was a time at Charlotte Regionals Zork format that I played all day, and we got into a win-in situation for points to get my invite. Like if I had won that game, I would have gotten my invite. And I had game the next turn, and I showed my opponent my hand, and he was just ready, like he didn't want to give me which is fine, but he was just ready to give us both a tie, so none of us got points, and that really sucks. Like at the end of the day, that really sucks. And I actually gave him the win, and I said to myself that there's no way that we both played this these days, and I've gotten some favorable concessions and some nice people in the past. So I think of those nice people or those nice situations. But I did concede, so he got the points, and I was devastated. Like we played that tournament was very grueling. That convention center, it sucked. There was a very bad bathroom situation. I remember Zach Lesage ripped his pants, his jeans. He's great, like it was a tournament for sure. Um, and Marcus Guy, father, great Pokemon player in his own, great Magic player, father of Brady Guy, also. I mean, both great guys, in last name and in people. But he was there to give me a hug. And there's a lot of tournaments where Rick Annert, I mean, for both of us, that he's there to give us a hug, and sometimes you need that. And I think as Pokemon players, as competitors, as people, is we need to learn to not cry alone. Like, yeah, it's okay to cry. Like, tell your friend. And I know on the cisgendered men side or on the men's side, like about being manly or being thing, like not showing weakness, you're not crying, you're not having that. I think it's a very human emotion to let it go out, because then once you let it out, then you can start to reflect on it. And I think that you just want to make sure that when you're going through that moments that it's better to do it not alone. Of course, a lot of times it will be alone, but just to have someone. And it's great that you had Joe. It's great you guys had that shared experience. And I think it's good for people to see now, with Pittsburgh and this both being top 64s and you basically losing. I don't want to say losing, but you did not win a competition for $1,000 in prize money. Would you, I'm assuming you would still feel the same, even if the money wasn't on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really about like the competition. I want to win. I want to. Yeah, it's not about the money for me.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
about
when you look at
how much effort I put into the game. And
when I look at the people that have won these tournaments, and like in this season's regionals, especially just for NA, and we look at the names John Eng, Azul, Christian Fontenot. That was obviously out in Europe, but he's a top player there. J.W. Creewall, Raymond, Andrew, like these are all
big
pros.
names,
Like
yeah.
these are all big names, and like someone like Alexander Flatos, the one Sacramento. That's like someone that I look up to, because I'm like, hey, this person came out of the woodwork, just came in and like flattened people with Lugia. First regionals, first win, like great on them. So when we look at people, and especially if you're one of the pros listening to this podcast, and you don't want to talk about like listening to a podcast to make you better because you're already good, right? And I think there's a lot of people that think about that. I think it's good for you to know that people that are competing on the same level as you feel this way. like feel, and it's very vulnerable and it sucks. But I think the more that we talk about it, and there's a lot of mental health stuff that comes in this game because this is a mental game.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in situations where you're tested and you're stressed and all that stuff. So thanks for sharing that. And you got to leave that behind. You got to leave those feelings behind because there's always another tournament, right?
Yeah.
And the another tournament that's coming is Charlotte Regionals. So if you're listening to this, it's this coming weekend. And what do you think? How do you think the meta is going to change? So, like Miraidon, we feel is not going to be one of the big decks. But here's the caveat. So you obviously have a way of thinking. You're going to be like, this is the meta spread. I want you to think about it this way. This is an East Coast. I mean, it's more central, but we're considering this an East Coast regional. There are going to be 2,655 masters.
Yep.
And I just want you to know before you say that like Miraidon is not going to be a big deck, that there is this thing called the League Battle deck,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And there was a League Battle deck
Yeah, the
that
Mew League
that had
Battle
a
deck?
Mew in it and really got people into playing Pokemon with Mew. And then there was one with Palkia in it. And now there's one with Miraidon in it. So before you decide to tell me how you think the meta is going to... I just want you to... Yeah, I don't know if it's going to change your mind, but I want you to take that into consideration on the average player. Do you think that we're going to have similar to San Antonio meta, which was a much bigger tournament than Portland? Or do you think the Portland, like Tina, is now the deck that everyone's going to come after or the deck everyone's going to play?
I mean, I think Charizard still has a massive target on it. I mean, it saw a huge amount of play. But yeah, I do think a lot of people will shift their focus to Tina. Now, I don't think this will come in the form of an increase in Guardy. I've been anticipating people to start picking up Guardy more, but it seems like it's not going to happen. So I would just expect decks that counter Zard and Tina. So I don't know what's a deck that beats Zard and Tina. I mean Guardy, but no.
Guardy does, but the thing is the skill gap to play Guardy, and again, so for a newer average player, like Guardy is going to be a pretty daunting deck. And I've played 54 rounds of Pokemon this year in premier events. I've played against Guardy 13 times. There was going into Brazil, I had played against Guardy 9 times in 3 regionals. That was 30% of my rounds, a third of my. I'd already played a regional against Guardy. I was 5-2-2 at that point, and now I'm like 7-4-2.
All right.
Right? So it is really tough when it comes to that deck. I would not personally touch that deck, and I think the top players will play a deck like that. I wonder if the match of the ages, number 1, Bradner versus Gearhart, will influence
The meta.
the meta, and people are going to play Tina. Or I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, maybe it might be. I mean, a lot of people are watching, right? If Isaiah smokes him, or if Gearhart smokes Isaiah, it'll influence people's perception of that matchup and how they want to approach it. So, if Gearhart comes out and he smokes Isaiah, especially if it's something decisive, like he beats him in 6 or 7 games, maybe people will play Guardy at
I'm surprised it's
Charlotte.
not first to 5.
It is first to 5.
Is it first to 5?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is first to 5. Yeah. I assume. Yeah. It's a best of 9. I assume
Yeah.
they'll stop once it's. Yeah.
If they are, just make sure that you have all your cards in your deck, because I did one time when I was streaming play against Azul in a Conquest, and I was winning, and I was like, are all my welders prize?
Oh my gosh.
And none of my welders were prize because I did not put any welders in my deck.
That's
But
a pretty crucial card.
that was the strength of Mewtwo, though, that I had no welders and I was still in the game.
I guess the Solgaleo attack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Lost Box. Let's talk. Sablezard has a good Tina matchup.
Yeah. It does.
Sablezard has a good Zard matchup. Why do you think is it the same thing? You think it's a skill gap kind of deck while people are playing less Sablezard?
I don't know. I think people just don't look at it. I know I haven't looked at it very much. I'm not really a comfy enjoyer per se, so I don't really like to look at too many Lost Box decks. But yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a deck like Sablezard could be very well positioned. I think Jirachi is pretty popular.
Yeah, Jirachi's I've played Lost Box to 5 out of the 6 events. I played Mew with you in Brazil. I highly considered playing Mew for the previous tournament. I think I would still play Hammers, and I know we're on the grabber plane here, but I think Hammers still has game against Charizard
Yeah.
because you can just hammer off an energy, and they have to find their Super Rod, and if you path them, there's a big chance that they won't find it, especially if you go path them to one. Now we're gonna have 2,655 people. Do you think Mew is a good play for that? Because Mew is just so consistent on setting up.
Yeah.
How many Spirit, like I feel like Spiritomb's not even a problem now with this new technology.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, when I think of a massive tournament, I think of taking tech cards out of my deck. I think the level of predictability you have about what decks you're going to play against is much lower. I mean, even in Portland, what do we 1,800 people or something?
Yeah, 16.
And Mark's playing against a bunch of crazy decks, and then I play against only Lost Box and Charizard.
So this is something we were talking about at the tournament, that we were like, you can prepare as much as you want for the best decks. And I remember this too when Buzzwole was the best, and you could never see it.
Yeah.
And it just depends on your run on the table, like whether you win the first round or whether you win or you lose the first round. It just puts you into these different brackets. So playing a deck that's consistent as possible, that you know as much as possible about that deck, has got to be one of the most important things of deciding. I do not think I will be flower selecting at this coming at Charlotte.
Okay.
Like I'm
Why not?
thinking, I want to play a deck that does the same thing every single time because it's the best at what it does, right? Like we don't swear on this podcast, but in the words of Drake, like I just want a deck to do the same thing every single time, so it's the best I ever had for this coming tournament. And I think that's what was RCS in the last format. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say like the decks that I'm looking at are like people are discounting Miraidon. I might play like Iron Hands is very good. Iron Hands is very good. You didn't play Deoxys V-Star. You didn't think it was good enough to play the Deoxys V-Star.
I didn't.
A lot of people cut the Deoxys V-Star. Jake is still very much on his Deoxys V-Star is the play. So we're gonna see what happens in that match. I want to play a Bibarel deck if possible. Like if it's not like a hit hard deck. Like if people are gonna switch to Tina, that means their game plan is Path Roxanne, Path Iono, right? What stops that? Bibarel, like obviously Charizard, TMZard has fallen is not a deck here in North America, but that does beat Disruption, right? Bibarel is going to be good. Bibarel is going to prevent you from being surpassed by that. Your Charizard's still going to get their Tina, right? Because they're going to have to take 2 prizes there. Or Arc Tina. Arc Tina should hypothetically have a very good matchup against Lost Tina. Brian, I believe, beat 4 Tina decks.
Okay.
Because they have to get 7 it's very hard for them to get 7 in the Lost Zone, right? Like it's easy if they hit everything, but like you're not getting double Comfy, Colress, Abyss Seeking every single game too. Like that's your ideal. You get to 6. But Trinity Charge, Trinity Nova to set up
Judge.
Tina. Yeah, you're just going in. You're just gonna knock out their Tina first because your Tina requires less setup, right? You just need to be able to find your boss under your path. And what does that tech play? It plays Bibarel.
Yeah.
So the path judge doesn't really. One thing that I've done in testing the matchup is Squovid is a liability.
Yeah.
Squovid with his 60 HP, like you probably don't want to bench that. I know it really works really well with your Bibarels, but you actually do want to set up 2 Bibarels. So if they lost mine one, they have to go lost mine a Bibarel, lost mine a Bibarel, and then take out a 2 V-Stars, right? Whether it's a Tina or RCS, I think that's also a good deck. And I know, well, we're not talking about this deck. No one's really talking about this deck. People talking about it, but Alec Geisler, 22nd place at San Antonio Regionals with Lugia, right? And I hate playing the best deck in the format. I hated Lugia when it was the best deck in the format.
But now it's not.
It's not the best deck in the format, and it might actually be the best deck in the. Okay, it's definitely not the best deck
in the
It's
format.
definitely not, but
It could be good.
But Iron Hands, right? Iron Hands and Miraidon. Iron Hands in this version of Tina. I don't know if the colorless version is better, but I think or Chen Pao. That plays Bibarel, right? That can play Iron Hands. Like Iron Hands will beat up on Comfy and on the babies in the Charizard deck,
Yeah.
right?
You just got to find something to deal with the big dart.
Yeah. So whether that's a Sableye,
I say black.
yeah, not Sableye. What's it called? A Shaman.
Oh, a shaman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shaman.
Say black.
Yeah, Alec had that in his deck. Or that's a Chen Pao. because Chen Pao's going to one shot that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a Venusaur
Oh
VMAX,
my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
or Mew. I think the Mew, like Mew seems really, but I mean, they had 6 in top 16. Those Mews
Yeah.
had to play against Charizard. So like,
Yeah.
you're the Mew player. How do you approach the Charizard matchup?
I, I mean, it's really just judge path and hope they brick. That's really the plan. You get to do it a couple times. You can beat one Zard with the hammer technology. You could beat a second Zard, or with the Luxray Grabber, you were really good at stopping them from ever getting a single Zard. But now that they're adapting to play this fusion package, I think it's just judge path, kill one Charizard, use Box of Disaster to like kill the one Charizard,
Yeah.
and then that's it. Just
Oh,
hope
for
they never
those,
get another one.
the game plan is you Psychic Leap into a Charizard,
Oh yeah.
right? You Psychic Leap one into a Charizard, and then you promote a Mew V with a Box of Disaster while having still another Mew V on your bench. They are going to knock out your Mew V. You're going to put 8 damage, and then you are. Do we still need one tablet?
If you get a Psychic Leap and a box off, it's just one tablet. Yeah.
Yeah, then we'll just need one tablet for 250 to one shot the Charizard.
Sometimes you can just like attack with a VMAX with a box,
Yeah.
and then they'll kill it, and then you just put up a new VMAX
And return it.
and then it's just double tab knockout, and then that applies like max pressure on them.
I think the scary part about that is like then they only need to set up one more Charizard and it's a 3-3, right? I think it's a slower game. That's maybe why I tied against Charizard in Brazil, is because I took those lines where I would try to leap first and then give them something to box. And that guarantees at least one game because I took one game off both my Charizard opponents. But that the hammers also slow them down. I don't know if everyone's going to adopt double super rod.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, that would make the hammers a little worse. I think like what you're talking about with the Psychic Leap is good when you have the hammer technology to deal with a second Charizard.
Yeah.
Then you can kind of drag out the game a bit more. But I think for these decks that have no answer to Charizard, you're gonna lose to that second Charizard no matter what. So just place all your eggs in one basket, that the basket of killing that first Charizard and hoping there's not a second
I
one.
think too with Grabber, like the issue with Grabber and Luxray is they all play Charmeleon now,
Yeah.
right? So they are going to be able to set up a second one, and then Arvin for Vacuum for Path really also sucks.
And then also you do just instantly lose to a Spiritomb when you don't have this sparkle stuff going on.
So I think you need to have that in your deck now. Mew versus Gardevoir. What's kind of the game plan on Mew's end there? I've never actually played that matchup, so
Yeah, I mean, I've played the matchup from both sides. From the Mew perspective, you're classic Mew strat, judge path. You can use your Box of Disasters to leverage KOs on their Arcanas, and that's about all. You can use Psychic Leap as well to get rid of your 3 prizer. Force them onto that like 3-2-2 or 3-3-2. Just don't let your
3-2-3. You mean?
3-2-3. Yeah, just don't let your opponent win by KOing 2 VMAXs. That's like the number one way to lose with Mew is by letting your opponent win by just killing 2. But yeah, otherwise just just
I think that's what
kill the Corellia.
there Drapion doesn't exist.
No,
Spiritomb exists, but
that's a real card.
Drapion does not exist. So I don't think any Mew enjoyers really have to fear that card. And as we go to like, why would you not play Snorlax control to a tournament? Because in your youth, when you were 16, 17,
Yeah.
you played a lot of control decks, and obviously in
yeah.
the seniors. So why would you not consider playing control in these big tournaments? And I know you hate ties too. So
Yes. I think I would be very open to playing control in the big tournament. In the big tournaments, it's worse because you have less control over what you're going to play against. And now we've seen these control decks kind of struggle a bit more in these newer formats because there's so many different good decks. And it's hard to beat like 8 decks at once with control. So when you go into these massive tournaments, your control deck presumably is going to have to take some kind of an auto loss. In this format, it seems like that auto loss is Tina. And you really just don't have enough control over your matchups. I think like you could hit, like I could play control and play against some random like theme deck, league battle deck that just happens to be
Or like
my
an
control
Arceus deck
or
that's just-
an Arceus deck, or a Palkia deck, or these kinds of fringe decks that maybe your control deck isn't ready for, and you're way more likely to hit something kind of random like that at these larger events. So that's why I wouldn't play Control
I
too.
think the difference between Magic the Gathering control versus Pokemon control is that in Magic the Gathering control, you can stop them from playing cards. So no matter what you're playing against, you can play cards to stop their
Yeah.
threats. But here, and so like, and are you the threat or are you the answer? So in Magic the Gathering, a lot of decks present either questions that must be answered, which are threats, or they are decks full of answers to try to answer all the threats in the format. When you play Control in Pokemon, you are answers
Answers.
for so many different things, but you don't draw them at the right time, or you need to set up your answers. So I think that makes it a little tougher. But on the flip point is if no one's ready for you, like you can just swing the tournament to your side,
Yeah.
which is much harder in some of the other games.
Yeah. I mean, I think also another thing to note about these control decks is that they're very good when your opponents are not prepared for them. Especially like when I was in seniors, often my opponents weren't prepared for these control decks, which is why I loved them so much. But right now, in honestly in all divisions, I mean, we've seen control been dominating the juniors and seniors division. I think people are ready for it now. I think people, I hope they when your opponent flips over a Snorlax, they have some kind of plan, which just inherently makes your
Switch?
deck worse. A switch, yeah. I mean, Azul's deck had a
Charizard
switch,
just one
right?
switch.
Yeah, or something like a Turo and Guardy decks, or even just knowing like how to play it optimally just provides so much of an edge.
I want to take this time that we've gone through all those decks to say that so if you are not subscribed, if you're watching this and not subscribed, that subscribing to the channel really helps in creating content and really supporting the creators to keep making this content. And this content is for everyone. And we've just talked about how Control can go through a tournament if someone isn't ready for it. And let me tell you, Control won the juniors tournament with someone that you coach
That's right.
in Josh Donnan.
Yeah.
Some people might say that they've never seen Josh Donnan in a top 8 before, but we definitely know who Josh Donnan is now. Know also his brother, very good player, also top 8 at seniors.
Yep, top four actually.
So, okay, Prince Williams, who I coach, current reigning LASC champion. He played Control in Toronto to top 16. He won Orlando Regionals with Mewtwo V Union Control. He even played Mimikyu Control last year. We played Control for this tournament too. We thought it was a good play. We actually played 3-3 Pidgeot. Not sorry, 2-3 3 Candy 3 Pidgeot to always ensure that the Pidgeot came. And he actually, I don't want to spoil it because we don't know if he'll come in, but he had amazing tech for the Miraidon matchup in the control. Yep.
Really? One that wasn't in Hale's deck originally.
Was not in Hale's deck, yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I mean, for him coming up, but he came 15th. He was one win away, and then I also had Edison Chen, who played the Roaring Moon Tina, that was one win away from top eighting as well. So what I want to ask is like we both Control and Tina were the two big decks. So there was 3 Control decks in juniors, 2 Tinas, 1 Zard, 1 Sable Zard, and 1 Rapid Strike. And the Rapid Strike player actually won the previous tournament with Rapid Strike. So
wow.
this junior's just been playing Rapid Strike. Brandon Salazar's played Rapid Strike to his last 3 Limitless tournaments.
Oh, has
So
he?
I think
Okay.
Rapid Strike enjoyers are just Rapid Strike enjoyers. Why Control? Why did you think that it was a great deck for Josh? Why did you guys settle on that one?
Yeah, I mean, kind of touching on what I just said is that a lot of juniors and seniors aren't ready for these control decks. Josh played against a Tina in top 4, and Tina, like historically, is a terrible matchup. But
Yeah.
I don't think his opponent necessarily knew the optimal way to play it, the optimal way to like conserve resources. It's like this whole second angle of the game you have to think about. If you've just been prize trading your whole time in the Pokemon TCG, then the second your opponent just starts passing, you get kind of confused.
And for the viewers, watch time is also very important. And if you're still watching, like this is why, going through the whole podcast is really good, is because you get these tidbits. Happy birthday to Gabriel Smart, but he actually came up to me and he's like, Tina cannot lose against Control. All you do is you Abyss Seeking till you hit 10. You put a Sableye down. You make sure that you get rid of the Pokemon that they can Erika's, and then you just spread damage on their board like crazy until you can take multiple prizes. He's like, you don't have to take any prize and you just Sableye. Because the other way to approach it is that you can take some prizes with Sableye and then eventually you set up a Tina and then the V-Star plus the Lost Impact should take your last two prizes, right? And if you KO Pidgey, that's four prizes. And then some amount of Shred, some amount of Lost Mine. But if you actually have the correct strategy where you're you're just gonna Sableye, then it kind of forces the control deck to attack with Pidgeot,
Yeah, to kill the Sableye.
which they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Tina also plays counter catcher, right? So having the correct matchup and what I'm really surprised is that's three control decks in juniors in top eight. Princess 15, that's four. That's four in the top 16. That's 25%. I don't think we've ever seen this much control in juniors before, or it wouldn't have been as successful. So what do you think for the juniors is making this control deck? Is it? I call it I term this the Great Equalizer. Pidgeot is the Great Equalizer because
Equalizer.
the skill gap is much shorter when you can search for whatever card you want at any time.
Yeah.
So before you would have to like sequence, you would have to thin your deck, you would have to get lucky to get these cards and go in the win. But Pidgeot actually takes skill gap between the average Joe or the pro, because while the pro is playing, as close to perfect as possible, the Joe can just be like, I need a boss's orders. And before you'd have to be in Lugia, you gotta be like Ultra Ball for Luminion. I gotta naturally draw my boss. But here you're like, Pidgeot for boss. And if you can't stop it. So do you think that's what's maybe made this control deck much better?
I don't know. I mean, Josh didn't play a Pidgeot in his deck. I don't think it's necessarily the Pidgeot. I think,
Is it simpler than other control decks in the past? Like,
yeah, it definitely is.
because it's
to an
just like
extent.
lock something in the active versus decking them out, or
Yeah, some of these old like the Zoroark kind of hand lock was like a big combo, and it was kind of hard to piece it together sometimes. Whereas this one, you're not necessarily building towards a combo, but you're just consistently deterring the resources. I think also I think it's just that the juniors and seniors nowadays are getting more savvy.
they're much better.
They're much better.
They're much better.
They're getting coaching. They're watching tons of videos. There's tons of and they're looking at Limitless. There's tons of resources out there for people to improve at all ages, and I think that control, seeing a high level of success in the junior division, especially, is a result of that.
I wonder if that's kind of what separates Benny Billinger pre-pandemic was like the number one junior. Like he won tournament, 10 junior regionals. And now we're seeing less juniors win multiple regionals. And we saw a lot even before that. It would be like the same three seniors winning all the regionals, right? That small group. And now we're seeing more diverse group of winners. And it's hard to win now because of all the extra information.
The internet is the great equalizer. That's what I think.
The internet is Pidgeot.
The internet is Pidgeot.
In seniors, there are only three distinct archetypes in top eight, which were Rapid Strike, Tina, and Control, which is very similar. The big part is we missed out on the Paldanian Wooper. That would have been really excited to see in top eight, and I think that would have had people like, did they misclick their deck list? But okay, why do you think Rapid Strike is having? Is it because like do we think the average players in those divisions are playing Charizard, so Rapid Strike can kind of come in? Like there's no Guardy in these top eights. So why do you think Rapid Strike has a very good win record in the lower divisions?
I mean, one explanation could be that there's just a couple of really talented Rapid Strike enjoyers now. I don't know. No, I'm not actually sure who these Rapid Strike players are. Do you know who they are?
Well, one of them is Lucas Oldale.
Okay.
He is, and he played a Phalanx in his deck.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. But then again, Control did not win here because I think they were ready, especially with Rapid Strike, Tina Control. So obviously the Tinas knew how to play that Control matchup. Yeah. But like Tina's also like a great 50-50 deck. So I don't see much innovation kind of in seniors. So
I think that's okay. I think often people overcomplicate it with the innovation. I spent a lot of time, especially at the beginning of seniors, just overcomplicating it. And sometimes you can just, take the Tina deck from online, know how to play it well, and that's good enough to win.
Now for Charlotte, it's coming up. What I talked about either a Bibarel deck, Lugia, or Miraidon, like Iron Hands. Are you just sticking to Guardy? Is
Yeah,
that kind
I'm,
of the
I'm
game
just
plan?
playing Guardy again. I mean, unless some brilliant idea comes across, I see no reason why not to just play Guardy again. So and my list, I felt like my list was great. You'll probably see me with the exact same Guardy list, honestly. But yeah,
And do you think from these Rapid Strike Control, Sablezard, Tina, do you think these are still good decks for the junior? Like I'm surprised there's no. I mean, they must have beat up on all the Miraidon.
yeah, and the Charizards,
There's no
there
guard. I
were,
wonder
yeah,
if a senior or a good like just played Guardy
yeah,
and ran through the tournament and just played it well, like they'd have a really good chance to beat these decks. And the other
I think
deck that
so.
I think that they be, is Roaring Moon.
Roaring Moon.
Roaring Moon actually had a pretty good conversion rate into in Portland on day two. I know it's not in the top, but if you actually click on Roaring Moon itself, in day two, oh, this is Pokestats. That's why I was like, what am I doing here? In day two of Portland, there were one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine Roaring Moon decks.
Okay.
And I don't think anyone's been talking about that. You definitely. And I mean, Raymond Liu in 22nd place, he played classical Roaring Moon
What's classical Roaring
for
Moon?
Professor Sada.
Okay.
Classical Roaring Moon. You're like, well,
What doesn't have four Professor
okay, hold on.
Sada?
Let me get so like this is for Professor Sada, and he has the water package for Ninja.
Ninja, yeah.
Okay, but okay, what?
Ross
I mean,
Coffman,
one of the
but
goats. One of the
Two Professor
two
Sada.
Professor Sada.
Uh,
So this is definitely Cawthon Moon. But there's no emergency jelly.
Interesting. Interesting.
So I don't know if he plays Iono. He plays like your regular switch. And Ross Cawthon was the Darkrai goat last form. He was the only person playing Darkrai.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this deck? I mean, this is the first time you're seeing this deck.
I don't know. I mean, he's definitely cooking. I would have to put some thought into it. Why there's a jelly? I'm not really sure.
Well,
Why
the
there's a
jelly makes it so that you have, I think, like 100 something HP left.
something. Is there like there must be like a specific attack he's trying to dodge? Like, do you dodge Sableye?
No, so it heals 120, right? So you do
Okay.
200 damage to yourself. So you have 150 HP left. So you would dodge Sableye.
dodge Sableye,
You would dodge
Cramorant.
Cramorant. What other attacks are we dodging? We
It might be. It might just be for Lost Box. It might
you're
just be.
you're dodging
Like
a
Tina.
Charmander.
A Charmander. You're dodging.
You're dodging the Charmander attack.
Okay. All right. That's kinda
Okay,
good.
one Arcana, like the Arcana will still hit you
damage,
there.
yeah.
But you're dodging Cress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This deck's interesting. I'm not super confident in Charizard's matchup.
I mean,
but
he's also Ross Cawthon.
he is also Ross.
Like if we let's
He
look
can
at
play
this
ham
let's look at
sandwich.
this tournament. Yeah, I tell the kids the ham sandwich. Like you're so good, you couldn't. They don't get it. But Ross Cawthon, Miraidon seems like a very good matchup for it. Rapid Strike seems like a very good matchup. He played Rapid Strike twice. What he lost to Tina.
Yeah.
He lost to Palkia. Palkia just hits harder. You have to fill your bench with this deck. And then he lost to a Charizard, but he beat Guardy twice. He beat Guardy twice. He beat Tina.
I don't know, man.
You're not.
I'm
he
not,
lost.
I'm not a
You know what?
believer. He's Ross Cawthon.
He went 1-2 against Tina, so I don't think
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah. He's going 1-2
Hey,
against Tina. That's not.
he beat Lucas Singh.
I know. I do see that.
He beat Lucas Singh.
I know.
All right. Anyway, I think that's where we're gonna end it. Shout out to Ross, the goat Cawthon, who's been playing the deck. Rowan doesn't believe in the deck. I might believe in the deck. So if you're looking to maybe crush some opponents, I mean, it should be Mew. Like we just said, Mew's good play for Joe's. Like maybe this is the deck to look at.